Good day. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Kalamata, Greece for Reason to Resist on March 14th, 2025. After Israel's genocide in Gaza began in October 2023, the Trudeau government of Canada announced it was adopting what it described as special measures to bring to Canada Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip who are extended family members of Canadian citizens and permanent residents. Initially, the Trudeau government capped the number of Palestinians who could come to Canada under this program at 1,000 persons. In May 2024, after coming under intense criticism for this pathetic initiative to help the victims of Israel's genocide, the Trudeau government announced that it was lifting the cap to 5,000 persons. On March 6th of this year, the government announced that it had received 5,000 applications under this program and that it would not process further applications. It's unclear at this stage how many Gazans have actually come to Canada under this program, but it is believed that the number is no more than a few hundred individuals. Even if Canada ultimately accepts 5,000 persons from Gaza, that would constitute a tiny fraction of the number of Ukrainian refugees Canada has welcomed since the Russian military intervention in Ukraine in February 2022. As of April 1st, 2024, Canada had approved about 963,000 applications for Ukrainians to travel to Canada on an emergency basis, and almost 300,000 Ukrainians had come to Canada under that program. So that was about a year ago. Presumably, the numbers are now considerably higher. And this is despite the fact that no court of competent jurisdiction has adjudged that Russia is committing genocide or plausibly committing genocide, whereas the International Court of Justice in January of last year ruled that it is plausible that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. Now here to discuss all of this with me is Omar Omar. Omar is a Canadian citizen who resides in the Canadian province of British Columbia. He has family members in Gaza who have been trying for months to come to Canada under the Gaza Special Measures Program. Thank you very much for joining me today, Omar.
Thanks, Dimitri.
Now, before we get into it, Omar, I just want to make a disclosure to our audience, just for the sake of transparency. I'm also a lawyer. I'm a member of a 7-lawyer legal team that is prosecuting a case against the Canadian government under Article 1 of the Genocide Convention, which requires parties to the convention to prevent genocide, and also under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I mention this because one of the complaints that our clients, who are Palestinian Canadians, are making is that this Gaza Special Measures Program is grossly inadequate to fulfill Canada's obligations. And when you compare it to the Ukrainian initiative to bring Ukrainians here to Canada, it is discriminatory, outright discriminatory. So I just wanted people to be aware of that. So Omar, could you begin by telling us about who in your extended family was in the Gaza Strip at the start of the genocide in October 2023?
Thank you. So I have 7 sisters, married. Not all of them married, 5 of them is married. 1 resides in the West Bank and 4 residing in the Gaza Strip, and 1 brother and my parents. So each one of my sisters who are married have almost 2 kids, 1 have 3 kids. So almost every single family member except 1 sister was in the Gaza Strip.
And could you describe to us, and please take your time in doing so, what have your family members in the Gaza Strip experienced since this genocide began?
As my family is located in the northern part of the Gaza Strip, mainly a city or a town called Beit Lahia, which is the first city when you enter from the borders with occupied Palestine. The first 2 days or 3 days of the genocide, when the genocide started, it was the first town that the Israeli army entered. So the impact and the scale of the invasion took really a big hit and toll on the first town. Since then, they've been 2 of my sisters or 3 of my sisters, I'm not really sure how many, because they've been evacuating multiple days back and forth. 3 of them evacuated to the south of the Gaza Strip with their families, And since then, they were not to be with my family, and my family had to evacuate from Beit Lahia, other towns nearby. The evacuation process, or what's called evacuation, because it's not evacuation, it's basically escaping the bombardment. And while escaping from this bombardment, um, there has been a lot of tragedies. Many of my cousins were killed during the escape, uh, especially during carpet bombing. And our whole town, our whole area has been completely erased. So at that moment, you can understand the amount of of pain, struggle, and I wouldn't even say the word anxiety, because anxiety is like maybe something that in Canada here people have on daily basis, but the amount of tragedy that has been going through while my parents and myself are watching different family members getting killed, our whole properties, our whole everything we had, everything that my parents saved money for, their whole life living outside the Gaza Strip to make money to come back, has been completely wiped out. Surviving the bombardment itself, I had three of my family members got really minor injuries because they escaped bombardment in last second. So three of the houses where my parents and my family members were hiding at got bombed while my parents were there. They escaped in the middle of the night running, while people from the same group who was with them in a different apartment in the same building got completely erased. A whole family were completely killed. And those family were just like one apartment away from where my family was staying. This continued not only once or twice, even multiple times. Even the school that they evacuated to in the Gaza City got completely occupied by the Israeli army, where my cousin got shot in front of my mother's eyes when he tried to just escape and get some food. And that's like during the escape of that school. Meanwhile, the same school got bombarded. My family managed by a miracle to also survive. Until now, until this moment, when we talk about these stories, they keep questioning how they survived all these um, situations without being killed. And I think it's a complete miracle after miracle when they keep surviving and running in a last minute, and other people are killed and other people are shot either before or after. I'm one of the luckiest people in the Gaza Strip who did not lose a one family member. Meanwhile, other families, at least every family in the Gaza Strip, either lost a member, or there's a member who's in Israeli prison who's kidnapped by the Israeli army, or been injured, which is the chances of having a full family not injured fully or killed or imprisoned is very low in the Gaza Strip.
So, Omar, which of your family members have applied to come to Canada under the Gaza Special Measures Program?
You mean when they apply?
No, which of them have applied? Who has applied from your family?
All of them. I applied for all of them, even my sister who resides in the West Bank. She mentioned that the situation in the West Bank is extremely unsafe. She lives in Ramallah, and she would like to be with the first time in her life under the same roof with my parents, because as a divided family between the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, it's almost impossible that my sister would get any chance to visit my parents or see my parents. So the last time she saw them was more than 8, 10 years ago, when we managed to smuggle her from the Gaza Strip to the West Bank to see her husband and be with her husband. So the way to get back from Ramallah or the West Bank to the Gaza Strip, which is less than an hour drive from my home to her place, is impossible because of all the permissions that you need to get by the Israeli army to cross through Gaza to the West Bank, which they don't issue to anyone.
And so, in total, how many family members have applied?
24.
24. So, how many of them have been granted approval to come to Canada under the Gaza Special Measures Program?
My sister and her husband and two kids, this is 4. My mom and my sister, who just got evacuated by the WHO, the World Health Organization, from Gaza to Egypt less than a week ago. And my other sister, who's also in Egypt. So in total, 3 plus 4. You're talking about 8 people.
And could you describe to us what they went through and what kind of information did they have to provide in order to have their applications approved? How long did they wait? And once they were granted approval, what happened then? Did they actually make it to Canada, or are they somewhere in between the Gaza Strip and Canada?
As an anchor, I had to fill all the documents on their behalf. They did not have any internet or phone or electricity coverage when they were living through the genocide. So I had to do all the paperwork for them. I had to fill for each one of them, especially the married ones, every single information about scars, social media, my in-laws, family. For example, my brother-in-law, family members, I had to fill all their social media, email addresses, contact information, history, and anything related. Like each of my in-laws have between 6 to 10, 11 siblings, and to get all this information from my brother-in-law and all my sisters, it took me days to get hold of any of them by any WhatsApp message or a regular phone call, international phone call. That was extremely brutal. I had to spend, if not weeks, I had to spend months to try to provide those information, especially that my family has been scattered all over the Gaza Strip. Some were residing in the north, some were residing in the south. And the situation was extremely difficult because my brother-in-law does not remember his siblings' date of birth or their passport number or any information, any really private, detailed information about their social media. So imagine being stuck filling 24 application for 24 people and my in-laws' siblings' information, and try to ask my brother if he has scars and how many of them and when he got them and why he got them. And that question applies to each one of my siblings and in-laws and their family. And I remember I was working my job at that time, my 9 to 5 job, and I had to take days off to just be able to put those documents together. It was a huge, messy process. But I think what mainly caused it caused me a burnout, is just going through the idea of thinking about why do I have to fill this number of unreasonable amount of information that is needed? Why do I need to tell Immigration Canada if my brother has a scar or not, and when he got it, or if he got one? Meanwhile, you're talking about a population who have been severely injured, not in the last genocide, but my brother, who's, for example, 22 years old, I think, or 23 years old, since the day he was born, he has been living under siege. And at least 7 Israeli assault operations on the Gaza Strip through his lifetime. He have seen nothing in his whole life but living under siege in the Gaza Strip. I don't know, how can I tell this guy how many scars he has? And the reason behind it is because if you want me to apply for you for a visa to come to Canada, the Canadian government wants to know how many scars. Imagine if you are a 23 years old kid who have seen nothing in your life but siege, living like we live near the borders and near the sea. If you go to the beach, you will see Israeli warships. If you go near the borders, you will see the Israeli apartheid war with an automated machine gun and tanks. And you have never left that area. And then when my brother is thinking about leaving, he doesn't want to leave, but when he thinks about leaving to start a new life, the government and the country where he will be starting a new life at is asking him how many scars he has and why is he having them. Meanwhile, this government knows the conditions that this person has been living under. In his brain, he was asking me, when I got the chance to ask him, like, he's like, I don't really think that I really want to come to a country that is already dehumanizing me before I even leave a genocidal apartheid state. And when I heard this statement from my 23 years old brother, I was shocked that this person knows already what he's going to be facing in Canada before even having to step out of the Gaza Strip. This thinking, you can replicate it to every single other family members in my family, and my family is extremely highly educated. My parents have graduate degrees, they traveled the world, and they lived all over the world. And the fact that they have spent their whole life to make savings and go back and live with dignity in the Gaza Strip and then survive a genocide and then come and immigrate and be in refuge where they did not really want it to another country that will dehumanize them even before their arrival. Imagine what this would make you feel while you are surviving a genocide, while you have been evacuating from a spot to another under a starvation. And the toll on me as a Palestinian who lived from another apartheid state to coming to Canada facing all these systemic racism. What kind of toll it would have on your brain.
So the 7 who have applied and who've been accepted, are any of them in Canada? If so, which ones? And where are the other ones?
Yeah, my sister Sharihan, who managed to escape from Gaza after paying a tremendous amount of money to my sisters and my whole family, but not the whole family managed to escape from Gaza to Egypt because of the checkpoints. We managed to get her out with her family. She applied in Egypt on April, and she got her visa in December, January. She managed to come to Canada in mid of February this year, 2025. Her and her family are a total family of 4. My other sister, who also is in Egypt, also managed to escape, uh, is also got her visa, and she will be on her way in the next couple weeks. My mom and my sister, who managed to get evacuated by the WHO, also got their visas, and they will be able to join here in the next few weeks, just after my sister gets some medical treatment for her cancer.
So one of your sisters who's applied is suffering from cancer at the moment. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, she's been diagnosed with cancer a few months ago, and I have been working 24/7 nonstop to try to get her diagnosed again and get some treatments in Gaza, but it wasn't possible because hospitals left neither even medications. And I was able to get her out through the WHO after a very impossible operation of contacting many people, calling many people to get her on the list where over 14,000 people is in that list. So expediting her process and her file took me a toll because there are 14,000 people between life and death who have been waiting to be evacuated, plus over 80,000 injured person who has been also waiting to get evacuated. Those 14,000 only cancer patients in the Gaza Strip, and the other 80,000 is people who are in critical medical need who got injured during the genocide.
So you heard me, Omar, say in my introduction that some 300,000 Ukrainians came to Canada with emergency authorization from the Canadian government by April 1st of last year, and that the total number of people who could come, if they eventually make it here from Gaza under the Palestinian Special Measures Program, is 5,000. How do you feel about that as a Canadian citizen, a citizen of this country? That these two grossly disparate programs have been set up by the government.
First, I feel happy and proud and really peace for every single Ukrainian who managed to come here. I'm one of the main people who was helping Syrian refugees in 2015 as a volunteer, and also connecting with many Ukrainian immigrants and refugees who came through the last couple of years through different programs, the same program. But when it comes to Palestinians, and when I first saw the policy, I could not believe my eyes. I remember I read the same web page maybe 20 times to understand, is this really the policy? And try to go and visit different links to see if that's all of it. Because it was very surprising and shocking to me, seeing not only the cab, but also as an immigrant myself, we became expert in reading immigration policies and navigating the IRCC website. I felt not only insulted or dehumanized, I felt it's like someone is trying to rub something in your face and tell you that you are not worth it. Do you like? I will put a similar action to it. Like when for example, the land acknowledgement that has been happening for many years by many Canadians here, when they are saying we are residing on the whole land acknowledgement, I see it as rubbing it on people's face every single day without doing anything. It's the most insulting, humiliating thing you can ever hear every single day from a settler, colonial individual living in this land, and then keep repeating it without doing anything. And this policy was a big statement from the same colonial power to tell Palestinians and Gazans, and mainly brown immigrants, we will issue you a policy and we will drop it in your face to tell you directly and indirectly that this is your worth as a human being. If we are able to bring and process 1 million visa application in less than 2 years and issue 1 million visa, we will work, after doing a big amount of lobbying and media coverage, and after showing the hypocrisy of this government. The government brought this policy, and then they said, we will only issue 1,000. If you remember at the beginning, they said only 1,000 visa. And then after more lobbying and more exposure to the policy, they extended it to 5,000, which is fine for us. But it's just a way to prepare you for a mental burnout, to tell you that you're not worth it. It's an indirect message to tell you your value. If we issue 1 million for these type of people, we will issue 1,000, and this is how you worth. It's an indirect message from an ethno-supremacy government to tell you that this is your value as a brown immigrant, as a Palestinian, as a Gazan. This is the max you will get. Don't even dream about more. I find it and I translate it this way. And if there is a different way of translating what happened, I would love to hear, because living with that idea is a painkiller. It's a poison to the brain. It kills your energy. It makes you struggle to survive, believing that you are a complete, full citizen or a full, complete human living with full equality and equity in this country that you dreamed about gaining your freedom and equality and equity by immigrating to, especially after living your whole life in the Gaza Strip under apartheid.
So, as you know, Omar, the Prime Minister of Canada, or former Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, has now officially resigned. This, I believe, happened hours ago. And Mark Carney is being sworn in as the new Prime Minister of Canada. Would you have any thoughts to share with Mark Carney about the policies of the Canadian government, not just with respect to this special measures program, but overall? If you had the opportunity to speak to him face to face, the new Prime Minister of Canada, what would you say to him?
Everyone, every single one of us, immigrants, non-immigrants, Canadians, first settlers, it doesn't matter. Everyone in Canada have been seeing how bad the Liberal Party have been dealing with the Palestinian cause. Everyone have witnessed the most tragic ways of how a Liberal Party and this party failed their own people when we were marching for many months in thousands, in tens of thousands, one of the biggest demonstrations in Canada's history, asking and demanding something. Meanwhile, this government failed to deliver the minimum. And then when it was too late, they came up with the ceasefire. They came up with this Gaza reunification and special measures program. This government and the Liberal Party's performance in the last 4 years, and especially in the last 3 years, and especially mainly during the genocide on Gaza, have highlighted how far the liberals are away from their own values and concepts and from their own program, from their political leadership with the people, how disconnected they are. And I hate to use the word disconnected, but they are completely disconnected. We all know how bad and how many promises Mr. Trudeau have been breaking through the whole years. And one of the biggest and worst one is the promise to provide equality to Canadians. Now, it's an easy win for Mark Carney to correct what has been happening by the Liberal government and the Liberal Party, because the amount of messed up and problems happened and caused by the previous Prime Minister is huge. He can use this for his own benefit. He can use this whole problems that has been caused by the previous Prime Minister to correct the path of this party that we are hoping that it will bring change, an actual change, not only promises, to correct the path and make many Canadians not only happy but satisfied, and correct things and we always hear about doing the right things. Well, here we go. This is your chance to prove that this is a new leadership with a new mindset, with a better mindset, with a person who is genuinely is willing to not manipulate words and give us smiles and say the right things without doing them, but to take actions. And when I look at his LinkedIn profile and his career profile, it sounds like we are dealing with someone who really knows how to make things done. And that's what we need. And at this time, mainly economically, but also politics-wise, we are talking about the Canadian country as a country. Canada has been historically well known as a peacemaker. We have seen it. We have seen some people and previous ministers of foreign affairs in Canada having Nobel Prize, right? We have seen Canada spending and sending peace troops into different conflict areas. It's time to regain this respect as a nation who is powerful, strong, and respectful, like the Canadians here. And he has the chance. He can do it. And we would love to see him doing it. And we would love to help him doing this. So he wants and he needs to talk to us. We need to be seen. We need to be heard by this government, by this new leadership, because we have not been heard or seen by the previous Prime Minister. The previous Prime Minister have not met any Palestinian, although many Palestinians and Palestinian groups offered at the beginning, but then when they saw his actions, they completely abandoned and boycotted any meeting with the Prime Minister because of his own policies, because of his own statements of standing and endorsement of an apartheid state, calling them best allies and biggest ally, and endorsing a genocide, and completely standing against international law by talking about ICC, and then correcting his position after a huge amount of pressure by lawyers and lobbying. We did not have to lobby to correct the Prime Minister's wrong statement about supporting international law. He should have by default supported international law. That's it. Let's not talk about the past. Let's talk about the future. We are willing to work with him. We are willing to see a perfect Liberal Party leading us to the future. But continuing with the same status quo is a complete failure and will not make us as Palestinians, as Arabs, as Canadians, as immigrants really vote for this party ever again.
And I must add as a footnote, Omar, that on his way out the door, Justin Trudeau declared himself to be a Zionist, even as this genocide was continuing. In any event, I thank you very much for joining me today, for taking the time to recount these very painful experiences you've had since this genocide began. And I wish all the members of your family who have applied to come to Canada swift and safe passage to this country. Thank you.
Thanks, Dimitri. Appreciate it. Take care.
And this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Kalamata, Greece on March 14th, 2025.